prerequisites before we start with this. So you need to have an Amazon MarketPlace account, and you need to have a console account in case you want to configure or do a manual launch. And you also, so I'll open this MarketPlace account for you. So this is the index page of the Adobe MarketPlace. And similarly, I'll open my console page for console access to my Amazon account. So I'll just sign in here with my credentials, and I'll go to MarketPlace and do a sign in. Fortunately for me, if I'm already signed in on the console side, it automatically picks up the credentials from there and logs in for you. Now, this is Adobe AWS Marketplace web page. I'll just mention Adobe Media Server. Do a search. This page, the search list should come with a list of all the available AMIs. In this case, there is only one, and it's also the latest one. So version 5.0.7 as of today. So this lands us onto the Adobe Media Server product index page for AWS Marketplace. There are a couple of fields which are worth mentioning here. There's a link to forums page in case you have any problems launching Adobe Media Server or any other operational issues with Adobe Media Server. You can post or discuss issues here on this web page. You have the list of the version. You have the version of the product mentioned here. You have the base operating system, which is CentOS 6.3. This is likely to change in future. You should keep an eye on this. And it tells you it's a 64-bit AMI. So I'll choose the default region in this case, which is US East in this case. I'll click on Continue button. So the page that next comes up, there are two tabs, but there is one click launch, there is a manual launch. For the purpose of this video, I will just use the M1 large type. And then we have something called VPC. Then there are three important tabs that need a little bit of discussion here. First one is VPC. By default, the AMI as of today, it may change in future. As of today, it launches in EC2 Classic mode. It is possible that in future, EC2 Classic mode may no longer be supported. In that case, you have to create your own VPC. So in this case, you can see I have already created two VPCs. I'll give you a brief introduction of what VPC is. VPC stands for Virtual Private Network. So it is a subnet out of which the IP addresses and hence the network access is granted to machines which are part of that VPC. No machine within which is outside of VPC can access any machine inside the VPC through those internal IP addresses. That ensures that all those machines are safe and secure from any unauthorized access or any hacker trying to access or through any of the unsecured ports. An important thing is that if every machine is inside the network, you need to have at least one machine in the subnet which has access to outside world. That is to say, people from outside can access that machine, because that is how you will render your services or you will make your product useful for the consumers to consume it. So if a VPC has only one machine, you ought to have a public IP address associated with that machine too. But if you have more than one machines, then you can choose which of these machines will have public interfacing and which ones will not. So whether you want to choose whether you want a particular machine to have a public facing IP address or not can be chosen when you are doing a manual launch of that machine. You can specify in the manual launch settings dialog of whether you want a public facing IP address for that machine or not. In case of EC2 Classic, every machine which is launched as EC2 Classic has a public facing IP address. That was about VPC. Coming to security groups. So security groups also you can create through your console account. So if you go to EC2 tabs, and there is on the left pane there is something called security groups. This will list you all the security groups and allow you to create a new security group also. I have already created a reference security group. So I'll discuss two important security. One is FMS. This, if you look at the settings, this is the minimum that you need in order to operate and work with Adobe Media Server. But there is another called FMS Admin, which opens certain new ports for you. I'll explain what those different ports are. SSH is for terminal access to the instance, which the Adobe Media Server instance which has been launched or which you are going to launch now. The HTTP will be the so HTTP 80 and similarly 8134. These are two ports opened or consumed by Apache Web Server, which is bundled along with Adobe Media Server. So these two ports are can be configured in the httpd.conf file of Apache Web Server. We may get a chance to talk about that briefly later down in this video. Then there is something called 1111 port. This is if you want an administrative access to Adobe Media Server. Please note, when I say administrative access, it is administrative access to Adobe Media Server and not to the machine per se. So you can use this. Lot of people choose to block these ports because they want these ports not to be available publicly. Otherwise, people can try to attack your machines. But depending on your convenience, you can choose appropriate subnet to allow this access, or you can block access or remove this port altogether from the list. But for the purpose of this video, I have chosen this security group which has this enabled just in order to demonstrate. Then you have 1935, which is the standard RTMP port, which is used by AMS for all the streaming. I have also included something called RDP port. Suppose you create a VPC and you have a Windows machine in it, and for some reasons you want remote desktop access to that Windows machine, you need to open these ports for that. I already discussed about 8134 along when I was talking about 80. And finally, the last two are UDP ports. Please note that if you are using AMS for RTMFP, I repeat, RTMFP protocol, then you need to have these ports open. That was about security group, and finally about key pair. The key pair here, there are a list of certain key pairs available here, but for the purpose of demonstration, I will show you how to create a key pair. So this is the console page. Right after they clicked on the dashboard, this is the console page here. I can click on the key pairs tab and create a new key pair. Let us name it test AMS. So as soon as I create one, I'll delete the existing file. It will download a new file for me. Let me save it. Let me save it here. So this is where I have saved it. So this is how. So once you download the file, the PM file would be there. I think we talked about Putty client as a prerequisite. So if you go to their website here, okay, I'll use the Putty, for example. This is Putty client. Wait me, just a minute. Save. Okay. So if you go to their about dialog, go to visit website, This is the website where you can download the putty client. As of now, I am having this version, but you should always try to go for the latest version available. You should download this version from their website and try to use it, or you may use any other terminal client for doing SSH access. But I'll explain you what are the different details about putty in this video. So anyway, once I have downloaded putty and its related utilities, this is all. Just ignore the web root. This is the file which I downloaded, test AMS. We'll ignore the web root for the time being. The rest of the files are the ones which I have downloaded from the putty website. The important ones here are putty.exe and puttygen.exe. Now the putty.exe is the actual file, the actual terminal client, connection client file. Puttygen we will talk about in a while now. So we have downloaded the spam file. So we need to create a PPK file out of the spam file. How to do it? We'll go to puttygen, conversions, import key, spam file, and I'll say save private key. So I'll use the same name, test, but with a different extension this time around. So it creates a PPK file. Now this file is going to be an input to this putty client. So I'll launch this putty client once again for you. So there are three important fields in this. One is the host name. We'll find out what the host name is shortly. The other is data, which is the admin user. I'll enter AMS admin. And then you have SSH auth. Here I have to specify the path to the PPK file. So we have to enter the host name here. We'll find out what the host name is. Now let us go back to AWS Marketplace. So we have, since we have created test AMS as our new key pair, if we refresh the page, once you refresh the page, you have to choose the settings once again, FS admin, and then the new drop down will have test AMS listed. This is the key pair which we'll use. Then I'll click on launch with one click. So this is this screen which comes up, this frame which comes up shows different fields which you chose: security group, the kind of machine, the region, the version of the product, and the key pair. Anyway, so I already have this, for example, running here. Let me kill my old instance so that there is no confusion around. So I'll terminate my old instance. So this is the new instance which is launching, which is still in the process of launching. Again, if I do a refresh, so this is the one which is launching. Now I hope it has already launched. So if you want to choose, if you click on this link, access software, instead of clicking on this, let us do a copy link first, and then let us paste this link into the notepad. So this is the link we should use in order to gain an web page access to the Adobe Media Server running on this instance, but we will come to that later on. First, let's extract the host name out of it. Control C, copy the host name into the host name field here, and let's give it some name, test AMS, something. It can be anything actually. And you see we have entered the host name. We already had entered AMS dialog, and in the auth section we had entered the private key, and now we do a save. Now save is important. I'll let you know why, because we will be visiting the server more than once. So I have saved it once and do an open. Now you should do this open only once this is showing it as running status. So if the first time you do an open of this machine, since the signatures of the machine are not known, it will ask you whether this is a machine you want to accept. You do a yes. This will not ask you from the next time onwards. So yeah, so important thing, warning, your password is expired. you must change your password and log in again. Changing password for the user AMS admin. Now it is very important to note that there is a user called AMS admin which has been created. Its password has been expired. Now this is an OS user. What you must know is that there are at least 3 different kinds of users in AMS. This is we will talk about each of them one after the other. But since the password for this user is not mentioned anywhere in the help document, we designed it in such a way so that the end user can set his password for the first time when he launches it. It will be set for it will be asked for only in the first time. The next time onwards, you will not be asked this password, and the appropriate PPK file will be used for logging in. So you must remember this password because you will all administrative tasks on this machine, whether they are related to AMS or otherwise, will be done by this OS login user called AMS admin. And this user has no administrative privileges. Every time it wants to do an administrative task, it needs to do a sudo, and for it to do a sudo, it will ask the Linux will always ask you for the password, and hence you must remember this password. So let me set this password to AMS #1234, just for the case of illustration. AMS #1234. So now this dismisses the dialog, but you have to launch it again, do a load again, and open. This time around it will not ask you, and from this time onwards it will always use the PPK file mentioned in the settings, in the PuTTY settings. Now Adobe Media Server is installed for you in this place. This is the webroot folder. So the configuration files for the Adobe Media Server are in the conf folder. There is an INI file called ams.ini. So there is few important things. You see the admin username here as admin. Now we know not a few things to keep in mind. We logged in as an OS user called AMS admin. This is an Adobe Media Server administration user. This has nothing to do with the user on the OS level. This is purely something specific and entirely available only within the scope of Adobe Media Server, and this is called Adobe Media Server admin user. The name of this user is admin, and you must know there is something called process UID and GID 500. This 500 corresponds to another user which is a OS login user called AMS. So there are 3 users now: AMS admin, which we logged in, the admin user, which is the Adobe Media Server administration user, and this OS login user. I will talk about this AMS user with the process UID 500 in a short while. So I talked to you about configuration. Let me talk to you about where all the assets are located. This is in the /mnt folder. This is on a different volume of which is attached to the to this particular instance. In any case, the applications of the Adobe Media Server are available on this volume, on this mount point. The logs folder generated are available on this. The webroot, which hosts all the media content consumed both by Adobe Media Server as well as Apache Web Server, is in this webroot folder. So we will go back to OPT, Adobe AMS. So you see over here there is a user called AMS. Now this particular user AMS has called the ID of 500, which I indicated in the ams.ini configuration file. Now this user has has no login property. That is to say, you cannot log in onto this machine using AMS user. That is because what AMS does is when it launches itself, it launches itself as a root. But if it continues to remain in the root mode, then anybody, if there is any memory, if there is any buffer overflow or any such attack by a third party on AMS, then as soon as he attacks it and gets hold of the process, then he can automatically gain a root privilege to this machine. So what we as an what Adobe Media Server team has done is that soon after the launch, it downgrades its privileges from the root privilege to a normal user privilege called AMS. So the AMS user has very normal privilege. You cannot, even if the user gains access to the process, he cannot have access to the entire machine. So this is a no login user. Now coming back, so we have explained what is AMS admin user. We have explained what is AMS user. Let me come to admin user, which was in, as I indicated earlier, in conf AMS .inl, which is, so this is the admin user. Now you can set the password for an admin user. You should actually, you always set the password or admin user the first time you launch a machine. So how to set an password for an admin user? You have to first, so obviously you have to do a sudo. And you have to do a stop on this. You have to enter the password which you set the first time. So if there is no process, fine, but if there is one, you should ensure that there is nothing running. Now you have to set the password for that particular admin user. This is how you do it. AMS admin minus console minus user and followed by the username. The username in the ANI file we mentioned was admin, so we choose that username. Obviously you have to do sudo admins. I'm sorry. So now the password, so this password has to be by default 8 characters or more in length. So we will choose the same password in this case also. ms #1234. So that now the password is set. Now if you want to restart the admin process, you can stop the admin process and the AMS as well as the AMS admin using command line in this fashion. Server stop is for stopping the AMS server process. The earlier command over here was stopping the admin server process. So I'll start this again. So this will not only launch the AMS server process, but will also launch AMS Apache process for you. If you want to launch administrative process, we have to go to the previous command, sudo. Note that you must always use sudo because AMS admin user does not have any other privileges, and in order to gain root privileges, you have to have a sudo for it. So now the AMS is up and running. So now you want to verify it, then also click on this particular link and it will take you to the index page. So the index page has a sample video playing. It will play shortly. The connection is slow, so for you, so for the purpose of video, it may take some time to play the video. So you can see that I have played the video. So I can stop this. I can go and launch an administrative console here also. We'll wait for the Swift to download. But meanwhile, if you I explained to you. I have already downloaded this zip file, administrative zip file on my machine and kept it in webroot folder. I can also launch using zip file here. So I have to enter the same IP address. Copy paste. Oh, no, sorry. I have already stored it here. I'll copy from here and pass. Since the user was admin, I and AMS #1234. So this is the access to the administrative console. Now this Swift also has downloaded. You can do the same here. This is the one and the same Swift. So basically you will see that since when we opened the index page, here there was some video playing and the video was playing as a part of VOD application. You see the VOD application listed here. You can do all sort of things, but again covering what administration console does should ideally be part of another video because it is very exhaustive thing. I'll just log off and so coming back here. So that is pretty much about it. So we talked about three users. I'll just AMS admin, which is the user for login. Then you have AMS user, which is the no login user, but is used internally by AMS for downloading its privileges soon after launch. And then you have admin user, which is exclusively within the scope of Adobe Media Server product and not part of the instance on which the product is available. Few other things to note about is this Apache web folder. CD, if you go, so this name of this folder will change if there's a plan to change the Apache distribution in future. As of now, it is 2.2. It may change to 2.4 or something like that. So over here, you will see there is a folder called conf, which has all the Apache configuration files. So I talked to you about. So AMS also downgraded, just like Adobe Media Server, AMS also downgraded its privileges to AMS and AMS, as is listed here. I'm looking here for the ports on which the server is running. Over here you see I talked to you about the different ports in the security group. So you can see that AMS runs on 80 and 8134 board concurrently. I think that's pretty much about how to get started using AMS. I think I have explained you about MNT earlier on in my video. I'll just go and explain you that there are different log files being created here. I'll show them to you. And then you have webroot. In the webroot you have an important thing is in case you have Apache web access issues, access forbidden issues, you should try to place a file called cross-domain.xml here. So what should be the content of cross-domain.xml? You should look for in the web. It is it's no longer a secret and it's available. The explanation for it is available all throughout the web, and you should actually go to the forums page. There is a sample cross-domain.xml available for download on the forums page also. And over here, if you go to VOD folder, this is where all the application, the media files consumed by Adobe Media Server, this is the folder being referenced there. So I'll show you the applications folder, for example. This is the applications folder. This is where the different Adobe Media Server applications by default live. You can change configuration settings to change the location. We'll go back to I discussed about starting stopping this server and starting stopping the administration server, which is a little different from starting stopping the normal server. And I'll give you brief AX about different. So process is running. I'll mention you also here. So you can see for yourself that these are AMS admin and login terminal processes. AMS master is launched as a root. Apache, one of the Apache processes is launched as a root, but the Apaches which actually serve the content are downgraded to privileges of AMS user. Again, there is some internal cache cleaning utility that is also launched part of root. You can but the AMS Edge process, which actually listens to all incoming RTMP, whether it is subscriber or publisher connections, is launched at AMS for the safety reasons. Similarly, AMS admin is launched as a root, you can see. So that does not change because, again, you should be aware who all is accessing your AMS admin process. And the AMS core is also launched as, which is actually serving the content for AMS, is also launched at AMS. So any entry points plus any operations are working as AMS user. I think that is pretty much about how to get started using AMS on Amazon MarketPlace. I thank you very much. If you want to close this server or monitor this server through console, I click on this is how you should do it. Click on that, it will take you to the console page, and if you right click on this instead, you can stop the server or terminate. Once you terminate the server, it will delete everything. Plus if you stop, but if you do just a stop, it will just stop it for you, and the charges will only for the disk and not for the running time, and you can always restart the server as and when you want. But once you do a terminate, the server will no longer be, the data on the server root disk will no longer be accessible. However, since I talked to you about this MNT folder, so once you terminate, only the root disk will be terminated, and any of this particular data will not be deleted. So if you have a recording application or you have assets here, they probably will not get deleted, but you should make sure. You should check twice before trying to do a terminate, of whether you really want to do a terminate or not. So for example, for this particular instance, I think in use means these two are there. So you will see that once you terminate the machine, this particular volume will get deleted, but this one, the volume attached, which has /mnt, blah, 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 will not get deleted. You will have to delete. Suppose you want to delete it, you will have to explicitly come to this page and delete this particular volume. Because we guess you may be having your important asset on this, and you should not lose those assets in case you accidentally terminate your instance. But if you really do not want and you add those assets, you should not be paying for them and hence you should come to this page and explicitly delete this volume. Thank you very much, and I think that pretty much ends this video. If there are any queries, please feel free to drop your comments wherever this video is further